everybody. Give us just a minute or two here so you all can get logged in, set up, get yourselves comfortable. And hopefully we'll have another good week. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I thought was pretty good in terms of the questions and getting pretty granular. I'm hoping today we get more kind of bring your case studies to the table, bring your acceptances, denials, financial aid awards. Again, we can go through as granular as we want into particular cases. As always, and for those of you that are new, please put any questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. That way everybody benefits from them. This week we are recorded, so we're going to get the full recording along with the transcription. So not making the same mistake I made 2 weeks ago, and that will not happen moving forward. A little bit of a different format today, okay? I hope you all enjoy it. I'm looking forward to it. And certainly we're going to get into the stuff we usually do, which is what's going on in our niche space here. And you're going to hear more than one voice today. But we're starting a new segment of sorts. And that's, I guess loosely calling it, get to know an advisor, get to know somebody else in this space. So we're going to get to know Johnathan West a little bit today. So welcome, Johnathan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you. Hi, everybody.
And for those that don't know that name, you haven't been paying attention. Johnathan's our most active advisor in the community. And by the way, super grateful for you, Johnathan. You'd think you were on staff. We probably owe you. We probably owe you something with the value that you brought to the community. So, and I'm sure for those of you that tune in regularly, at some point, Johnathan has helped you out, weighed in on a question, gave his opinion, posted some questions, resources, etc. And so our thinking is, again, just to get another voice. I know most of you are probably sick of hearing just, me being a talking head each week, get some other opinions, learn about different practices and structures and successes, failures, etc. But also we want to feature you guys, so we're going to feature Johnathan in the blog and get him out on social media, kind of have a recap of our conversation today. I send him a little kind of Q&A beforehand with some questions professionally and personally. So we want to help to try to promote him and his practice, and that's something that we want to do with some regularity moving forward. And it wasn't a coincidence that I tagged Johnathan to join us for kind of our first year, because in my opinion, he's brought in our entire community of advisors the most value. So we want to try to hopefully give something back, get some exposure for him, and would love to do that with you all. But just know that your odds of having the opportunity here, number one, if you want to kind of throw your hat in the ring, but number two, if you want to heighten the odds of having a seat at the table here, get engaged in the community. That's a great way to do it. So without further ado, Johnathan, what I want to do is start right at the very beginning. So where'd you grow up? Where'd you get started?
Grew up in Virginia, in Newport News. I'm in Richmond now. Moved up here 20 years ago, about, and but have been in Virginia my whole life. Went to college in North Carolina, so didn't go very far.
Okay.
So just a Southern guy.
You're a Southern boy.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And
I think Virginia's still in the South. It's iffy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how'd you grow up? What was siblings? What was your structure? What parents do? What did their how you were brought up kind of put you on the path to where you are today, or how'd you?
It did. I've got one older brother who's in Newport News still. My mom didn't work. Our dad was had an insurance agency, an independent insurance agency that my brother runs now, and he's sold it a few times, but generally runs. And my dad also was on the board of a savings and loan. And when I got out of school and was an economics degree, what do you do with that? But I went into the banking business after school, working there. I was a teller trainee making, it was 1982, I was making $12,000. That was the most money I'd ever had. It was awesome.
You got a made in the state. You were rolling in it.
It was great. It was great. Then I became a branch manager trainee, and then I ended up going over to doing commercial lending. In the 80s, the whole savings and loan industry was just totally getting, up in the air about stuff that's happening. And we did a lot of commercial lending and joint ventures and real estate stuff, and which was just great experience. A lot of apartments, hotels, and I got to work with my dad on that, which was great. And it kind of started me on a path, though, of a little less traditional. My brother had gone to work for the Hartford. He was up your way, and so he was an employee in a big company, and I never was. I was always more, kind of small, independent, which fits my thinking too. And there are good and bad things about that, but that's kind of how I would say definitely got me started on this. And then I went into the financial field more full-time in the 90s. And so between the banking part and everything, I've always kind of been in the money field, but then went specifically into the investment advisor part with a cousin of mine who was in Newport News, a lot of family in Newport News. He was older and had been in it for ages. And then he started an RIA and I was with him. So it was the two of us. And we did that for about 15, this was about 15 years. He passed away and then I took it over. And that was about 5 years ago. So I always had kind of both the financial piece going and kind of the family piece going.
Cool. And then when did the college piece come into?
College came in about 10 years ago, a little more. I was up here. I was commuting from Richmond to Newport News, which was getting old. It was an hour, 20 minutes or so each way. And I'm like, I'm going to open an office up here. I'm going to, so I did that. And then I'm like, okay, well, now I got to talk to people. And Richmond's an old money kind of town, and there are a lot of great established places to put your money for the people that have it. And one of them was not going to be here. And so in just kind of like this, what am I going to talk to people about? Right then, our oldest was kind of a junior in high school, and he was going through the college thing, and I hadn't gone through the college thing, since I went. And that was mostly my parents doing it, really, from paying it. And so I learned then how much I didn't know about paying for college. And I'm like, I got to do something about this. And that kind of was how the college thing started for me. Just from out of desperation, out of self-interest. But I really realized how much, people really, I'm like, everybody needs to know this stuff. I mean, and you had to rely on the guidance counselor at school to tell us, to you. They were more interested in where you were going to go than how you're going to pay for it.
Yeah, that's not in their job description.
And
we have a ton of clients that are financial planners, really financially astute folks, really smart folks, but this is its own deal. And I've talked to a lot of planners that have got involved in this space, kind of similar to you, based on personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Geez, I thought I was a pretty good money person and financially savvy, right? And there's kind of little to no correlation into this massive investment, right? So I think that's like a somewhat traditional path. You saw the opportunity when you experienced it yourself and was like, holy shit.
Right. It wasn't on my radar at all. Yeah, before that. I mean, there was funny because there was a Morningstar, I'm sitting around wondering about this, and I used to get the Morningstar emails, and I read one, and it just was on that very topic. And it was just, it was one of those things. It's like, okay, that didn't just come across my screen for nothing. It was, there's got to be some reason that I'm reading this. Otherwise, I never would have really thought about it. And one thing led to another. So.
Love it. Where did you go to school? North Carolina?
Davidson.
Oh, nice. Good for you. I was a Steph Curry fan.
Huge.
Yeah.
Well, as a player and a guy, Yeah, yeah. They can get a little far afield in the NBA these days, but no, it was great. It was,
You had a good experience. You still close
uh,
with buddies from Davidson?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I just could never. I'm like, I look back and it was funny. I found some old files and stuff from when I was there, and I know I'd never get in now. That's one, which is so I'm just like, and then two, I think it was $3,500 a year.
Unbelievable.
1978. So, I mean, it's a little more than that now. I just,
Yeah, right. You got to
it's
carry a
just
couple of
ridiculous.
carry
Yeah,
or two.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and so paying for that, I don't know, but it was good. It was
Well,
good.
next
I
time
like the small.
you have to show us some pictures of the college days. Uh,
I,
next time we have you on, we'll circle
they're,
back.
they're just blackmail material. Yeah,
That's what I was hoping for.
yeah.
That is exactly what I was hoping for.
I'm not going to get into that. Okay.
So I guess one thing that I talked about from a real high level before we jumped on here, a few minutes before we jumped on, but we didn't really dig in, was I'm assuming there's probably some relatively as a matter of fact, I know there are some folks that are joining that are new to the space and are just kind of considering going all in on college or got started, but are having a tough time getting traction. And I guess we could apply this to any probably part of being an entrepreneur or any business, but talk to me a little bit about your mindset in terms of when you first got started and decided to go to this college piece and maybe weren't having success you wanted, or kind of some doubts, or because what allowed you, I guess, to push through to get to the point where you are today, or where you eventually landed.
That's a good question, and I totally agree with that about having some doubts and hitting walls, and it happens. It doesn't go away. It's not like just getting on the other side and everything's downhill. But for me, there's so many ways. I'm not a big marketing person. I love, no problem talking to people, but I just don't want to do the going out to meet them kind of thing. If you get a room together, I'll come and talk all day. But I'm just not real great on going out and beating the bushes and getting people to come and saying how great this is and whatever. I hate that. So for me, the thing that I found spoke to me the most, and this is kind of where I'm going to go with this, was writing. It was writing a newsletter. It was writing blog posts. And then the one that really helped me the most, I think, was I wrote, this was back, okay, this is a good dating of it, when net price calculators came out.
Mm-hmm.
And they were a new thing. And I thought they were pretty cool. I mean, it was a new tool. It was everybody had to have them. We assumed they were kind of accurate, more accurate than anything else. Mm-hmm. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take every state school in Virginia. I'm going to create a hypothetical family, kind of like we do in the tool of a sample family. And I'm going to go put all their numbers in each school, and I'm going to see what their sticker price is and what the net price is. And I did that. And, this isn't going to be a surprise to everybody on the call, but the two most expensive schools in Virginia still are Washington Lee and Richmond. And they were the two cheapest schools net. And I was using a family with like $75,000 income or something, 4 kids or 2 kids. Anyway, I thought, this is really neat. I had all these numbers, had it in a spreadsheet. That's fun. I love doing a spreadsheet. And so I combined I made a little graph and the numbers, a table, and then I wrote about it and I sent it to the newspaper. And I said, would you guys be interested in running this story? And, I'm like, I'm not even gonna get a reply.
Sure.
And the editorial page editor said, we'd love to. This is great. And so they ran it in a Sunday paper, which was, great. I got reprints, had a little headshot in there, all this kind of stuff. And it was like instant bit of credibility. And people saw it. I could I've got permission to do reprints and make copies. I use that for marketing. I didn't no problem mailing that out. That was fine. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could just mail them the thing. And that was really, I really, that was a big help for me. And I think because otherwise I was just kind of struggling. I'm just another voice, nothing setting me apart. But nobody else was writing this kind of thing. And everybody who read it told me, at least that commented to me about it, said it was helpful. So I like that. That's the whole point.
Cool. And so that's been how you've gotten people in the door, is really just
writing. It's writing, and then that I've gotten to write. I'll end up with some opinions about things. Imagine that. And now once they've got new publishers at the paper, but I've probably written 5 things. I've sent that also gave me some confidence. So I started sending them to other papers. And I've gotten stuff in Norfolk and Newport News and Charlottesville and Fairfax. And, I'm like, of course, I'll just encourage you. It's not that hard to get something in the paper as an op-ed piece. And you just follow their rules and stuff, and they're fine with it. And they don't vet it. Nobody comes behind you to say, well, is this really true?
Who's right? Who's going to, who on staff is going to say, well, that's not true. They, this school doesn't meet that percentage of need, right?
Right. Seriously. And so but it gives you something right away, and you can, then you have an in the news little thing that you can have posts, and you can make reprints for people. And I think that really helps. And then I've written in a newsletter. There's I give a little poke, a little shout out. Michael Katz is a kind of a consultant guy, and he does a lot of marketing help for small businesses, and he's real big on writing newsletters. And so I took a course of his. Great guy, real nice, talked to him a lot, and he's just helped with kind of just this regular idea of writing out stuff and trying to be yourself, not trying to, write. I'm a little too straight and boring in what I write. I'm trying to be helpful and give facts and stuff like that. And he's more about tell stories and, let people know you. And I appreciate that. And one day I'll get there. But it's still the point of if writing is something that you enjoy doing, then just do it regularly and get that out there, and people, it'll grow. It takes time, but it'll grow. So it's kind of a drip thing.
So, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, because like my takeaways are, you got to lean into your style, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, you don't want to go beat the drum and go knock on all these guidance counselors' doors and meet with these PTAs and try to do all the kind of marketing stuff. That's not you.
Right.
You like to write, right? Which of course is not everyone.
Right.
So do that. And then I think another thing that you do a great job at, like we're always trying to do better. Like I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to be intentional about this almost every day, at least every week, because as the consumer, this is what I buy into. And I would also say, like, that's why you're here today, or here first, is you're just leading with value, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that you don't have much to gain monetization wise, let's say, by answering questions in the community and things like this. Maybe a piece of that is self-serving. Like, hey, you get out there and I don't know, right? And God bless. It should be, okay? But I think a lot of that is just like, hey, I like this stuff. I know about this stuff. I can tell this is a new advisor. I had that question 5 years ago. And it's just like you, and so we're like trying hard to do that. I'm trying hard to do that because, again, I think I can see the difference, again, a lot of times as the consumer of like, listen, these guys are just like leading with value, and I'm appreciate that, right? And then it kind of turns into monetization, right? Like I like certain podcasts that I listen to or things like this, like they're making money off of it, but oftentimes it's like I'll buy their products that they're promoting and stuff like that just because I appreciate their podcast. Right. I'm like, that sounds like a good product. Let me check it out, right? Oh. So that's like another thing that I hear. That I think is like a common theme, and especially in this space, there's so much value we can provide to everyone. And also, I keep coming back to this, and we're trying to do continue to put our money where our mouth is how you can help the underserved, right? And like give this like and we're working super hard. As a matter of fact, it's going to go live this Monday. We just had a meeting at 11 o'clock today to think about if we had to go live today or tomorrow. And it's more like this enterprise type of solution that allows better tracking and multiple advisors within CAP and things like this. But a big piece of that is for, let's say, a underprivileged school district, whatever the appropriate terminology is, where every guidance counselor would get to have a CAP account to use for all the families in the high school type of deal. It's like, wow, we want you all to go out there and be like, I got this, you know, for, again, whether it's a local nonprofit, whether it's a school district that you know, and even in the school districts that are not underprivileged, there's a percentage of the kids that are, you know, give it to the guidance counselor to use specifically for those kids. So kind of want to make sure that everybody has, you know, the authority to strike up these relationships. And again, kind of leading with that, and it might lead to things that are business opportunities, right, as well. But I don't know if you do anything in this space, Johnathan, more on the philanthropic front.
I'll tell you what leading with value, because I totally agree with you. And you know, there is the kind of the seminar / webinar route, which is great. I like doing those, but honestly, they were and I did one of those for the library system here in one of the county libraries. They had me go in every library and do a talk, you know, all around the county, which was great. I had 2 people at one of them. It was, you know, I'm like, if anybody else comes, then we're definitely going to have it, you know. But it's those to me are just a little bit of a challenge. There's a competitor not far from here who does direct mail. They get people in, they make them bring their tax returns and all this stuff. They hound them because I've had friends that went, they hound them for days after about everything. And I'm just like, you know, if that's what it is, I'm not going to do it. That's just because that's not me. It's fine if that's your model, but I'm not going to do that. What I did as you're talking about, was I noticed that all the schools had scholarships, different private scholarships listed in their guidance offices on the websites. And it was really funny because they would have, you know, some national ones, some local ones, and one school would have some, and a school a mile away would have different ones. And I'm like, yeah. And then one would be a PDF and one would be a spreadsheet. And it was like, this is just, I don't know. So I said, I'm going to just get all these different private scholarships that are local that they've already got, and I'm going to put them in one place. And I'm going to do it on WordPress because that was what I was using for my website. And so each one was like a post, and I would summarize them and give a link back to where they were, maybe to the sponsor. And you know, I started out with like maybe 50 or 100, and I thought that was pretty cool. And it was just up there on the website. I mean, I'm not doing any of this sign up thing or anything because it was too complicated. And then I would come in at the beginning and I would say, I'm going to find another 10 scholarships today, and just start looking and find 10, and then I'd stop. And before I knew it, I mean, it's up to 550, I think, local scholarships. And, you know, it's all stuff that's out there. It's not, this isn't secret. I'm not selling anything with it. But when I had that, when I was working on that, even back in the beginning, I printed up some like cards and stuff, just talking about scholarship database, free, and I went to all the libraries and said, you know, can I leave these here? And the librarians loved it. And, you know, I guarantee if I'd gone in with business cards or a little thing about college funding group, nothing, zero. And so I could go to the counselors at the schools that have they're kind of standoffish about businesses coming in. And I could tell them, look, just, you know, there's a scholarship person in each school. And I'd say, you know, we've got all these scholarships together. Why don't you just look at it? And so the schools started putting links in their scholarship newsletter to our website just to get the scholarships, you know. And so the traffic, you know, nobody's going to go to my website. I mean, they don't even know I'm here. But when I'm leading with scholarships, it just brings in traffic, and then, you know, whatever happens with the traffic happens with the traffic. But hopefully at least gives me a chance to do something that otherwise I wouldn't even get in front of anybody.
Phenomenal idea. That's
yeah.
great. I mean, we might poach that.
Please, it's fun.
and everybody else listening should as well. And for what it's worth too, we're actually just we're building and I don't want to mess with what you got going on down there, John.
No,
but I think it'll be good for everybody that we're building a private scholarship search engine into CAP right now. So, and we're hoping it's not going to, it probably is going to be too late for this year, prime scholarship season, the tail end. It'll certainly be ready for class of 2022 and maybe the end of class 2021. But that's going to be another nice feature that, even though those of us in a space know that private scholarships is like this minuscule part of this whole pie that is paying for college and where to get the most bang for our buck, it's still the number one buzzword for everybody, right? Almost everybody that you talk to goes, and do you know about all these different private scholarships? Like almost universally, you're going to get that question. So it's going to be, even though again, it's borderline a marketing, kind of hook in terms of the true value it provides. At least now everybody's going to be able to say, yeah, sure, dude, there's a customized one right in your tool and in the family portal and all this. So that is because at first, me especially was kind of squashing that, being like, it does not move the needle, private scholarships. We got to like squash that myth. But then it's like, why? I kind of came full circle, right? And the rest of everybody else is like, it doesn't matter. That's not what the general public thinks. So let's lean into that. And that's
and I'll tell you, I mean, because I totally agree with you, but especially with local ones, when I was trying to do some webinar stuff at one of the schools last year, and I called the PTSA head president, and she was like, "Oh, I know you. I've never met her. I have no idea who she is." Right? She's like, "Oh, I know you. My daughter won a scholarship that she found on your website. I'll definitely get you in here." I'm like, "Oh, great, thanks."
wow.
Plus, it's nice to hear stories from people, and you do hear. I mean, people get confused. I mean, I've gotten applications in the mail, and they call up and they say like, "What's the deadline? Because I'm coming over this afternoon," and I'm like, "No, don't come here." But you do get stories of people that have had good outcomes from something, and that's really nice. That's really
and listen, and you'll take that collateral damage there. Somebody
Yeah.
calls, right? And there it is again, leading with value and translating into business. So got a couple of questions here, and I was going to ask this question myself. Do you care to share a little bit about how your business is structured, what your deliverables are, your fee structure? Again, if to the extent that you're willing to share, talk to us about your process a little bit.
Yeah. I mean that I'm just do a little bit on that because I think that's something you can talk about for a long time. And
you're a thorough guy.
Right. And when I started, I really struggle with what do you charge and what are the deliverables, because it's advice. You're talking to somebody, you're going over numbers. I mean, how often do you meet? Are you charging them by the hour? I mean, that you can do that. That's what I was doing, and that's a rough road. Because people don't really understand the value if they're learning about it. You tell somebody, what do you do? And you say, well, you work on your elevator speech. Well, college funding planning. Okay, now you got to explain what that is. Really, I mean, it's just. Jeff Bezos was saying that when he started, people used to ask him what the internet was. So it isn't quite like that, but it's you got to have a better way of
even Bill Gates said that you got to have your PhD to understand the FAFSA. So there's some line to that effect, right? And one of his foundations is all about like FAFSA simplicity. We try to remember to like tweet at them and things like this that we're nowhere on their radar, but in hopefully someday we could get involved with the conversation with them to be like, yeah, you listen, we speak that language too.
Yeah.
But sorry to.
No, I agree. Where I settled, the models I was looking at were a little higher than, I think you've got to be comfortable with what you're charging as the owner of the business, and the people obviously need to be comfortable paying. I'll give stuff away to a fault too much, and that's on me. But where I settled down was a initial fee that was what I thought was reasonable based on the market and based on what I think people are getting, and that's in the $600-700 range. Depends on a little bit on complexity. But then to me, because it's really a relationship that you're doing, this isn't a one-time service. I mean, you're going to be working and walking with these people throughout the high school years and even into college. And so to me, it justifies kind of an ongoing fee type thing. It's not just a one-time thing and we're done. And that made it a little more palatable to me, because then it's like spreading it out like an installment sale, as opposed to doing it all up front, which
Less
there's a
painful.
lot to be said for that too, and I get that. So I do a quarterly fee that I'm can't do monthly and stuff, so I'll do a quarterly fee kind of in the range of $100 to $150, and I kind of planned it out based on where they're starting. I'm not going to just drip them with bills forever. But so to me, the whole thing is, you're getting kind of for me, $1,500 to $2,000 from a relationship over a number of years. And I think that kind of works. But I'm open to hearing other ideas from people, and it wasn't where I started, wasn't how I started. That was in terms of deliverables, CAP really helps with that to me, because it gives you a very specific. I used to struggle with documentation. You don't want to just give people paper, but it's really good when you can have something that's as good as the reports that we're getting from CAP. And so using that as the basis, and then now clients can have access to the dashboard, and which alleviates the need to print and do things. And then it's just talking, and it's staying involved, and it's working through questions, because they're going to come up, and it so far that's kind of my model, and it works.
Awesome. Cool. And do you so it sounds like you don't get, I'm reading in between the lines here, but you don't get hands-on, for example, with the FAFSA, the CSS profiles, that you're not preparing those? Are you reviewing them? Is it just one-off questions around them? What's your level of involvement around that piece?
I'm not preparing them, but I've done screen sharing when clients have had questions on specific parts and gone over that. I'm happy to go through. Sometimes they'll print out something, they'll bring it in, they'll bring in their tax returns, we'll go over all the different questions before the data retrieval and things, when you could actually put in the numbers. So I get involved in the forms, because I think they're really important, especially for families that are going to get some need. But I'm not doing it. I'm not getting their username and password, doing the stuff. I'm not having them come in, sit down, let's fill out the FAFSA. I've done that, I think, once. I realized that wasn't gonna be good.
Didn't work out for you.
Yeah, it wasn't gonna work out for you.
Totally good. Okay, cool. And do you have kind of like an ideal number of clients you like to work with in a given year? That's part A of my question. Part B is, and I think I know the answer to this, and just having talked to you over the years here, but is there a goal that a percentage of those become more in-depth financial planning clients, or do you outsource when they come up? Like, if you could talk about those kind of two things.
Yeah, I haven't hit my limit on college clients yet, so I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
At any one time. I mean, I'm able to handle, because of CAP, and because of just relationships with people who don't even need to be in CAP, who are just doing questions and things. I mean, I'll try to help, even if it's on a smaller basis financially. I've got some people that I've had for years that are still hourly, that are getting around to their third kid, and I'm not going to change what I'm charging them just because I came up with a new idea.
Right.
On the kind of the financial planning piece, my money management stuff was always, I'm not a CFP, and my money management stuff has always just been literally money management, allocations, moving around. I'm a tactical type guy. I'm not a buy and hold guy, so I'm moving stuff around monthly, and not quite Robin Hood, but I get where they're coming from. Anyway, so when I did the college piece, it was like, these are going to be two separate things. They're not going to be, they're two separate corporations, LLCs. They're, I actually registered both of them, but the other one was registered, but I registered College Funding Group. And then I realized I really don't need to be registered, so I'll let that lapse. But the crossover, to me, is just, it doesn't even come up. If somebody asks me about it, I'll tell them about it, but I in no way tell clients when they're coming in to talk and they're talking about what money they have and it's with a broker or something. I don't give them a spiel on, well, what you earned last blah, 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 and look at this performance. Doesn't even come up. I'm not gonna do that. They're here to talk about what their needs are for college, and that's what we talk about. So.
Okay. So it's not a part of your practice at all unless they are being proactive with you to say, help me out with my IRA.
Right. And I came in, through the route when I really originally started, that it was financial planning. College was a subset of financial planning, and it was kind of, do the whole thing. And this is the niche for it. But I'm not a financial planner, never will be. And so I'm just not going to go that way.
Okay.
But it's fine too. It's just not me.
Yeah. No, yeah. And listen, we I think there's different ways to make this work, right? And for some folks, it's financial planning first, and college is a great way to get in front of people and additional revenue stream and things like this. And, right. So it sounds like for you, it wasn't necessarily intentional that the college piece was going to become your, the breadwinner of the business, so to speak. It just kind of worked out that way. Is that right?
Yeah, and that was where my heart was.
Okay.
I mean, totally. I mean, just it took me less than a year to figure that out. Once I kind of immersed myself in the learning about everything and getting kind of trained. And then I'm like, I really enjoy this. If you give me two things to talk about, I can go talk about the market or go talk about college. I'll go talk about college.
Cool.
I mean, I'm not going to add any great nuance. I've got opinions about the market and all that, but I'm not going to, help anybody's life in the next few years with my opinion about the market.
It's more crowded
college,
space. It's a more crowded space. It's tougher to differentiate.
Oh, sure.
That's for sure too.
Yeah. I think got TV channels devoted to it.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. No, I hear you loud and clear. I mean, that's a big, I got into this initially just in the college planning piece. I wasn't even thinking about being a planner that was going to differentiate, but I've come to learn how important and powerful it can be. So that's, so again, just for the folks that are somewhat new here, it takes some time. You're building a new practice. You're building a new business, but there's a real proof of concept here. So one more kind of question here before we dive into kind of what's going on now. What are we seeing for this class of 2021? I want to circle back. And so it sounds like you got the business running. You got, you're living down there, you're a Southern boy that's still living there. You're about to marry off a son. You got a couple kids through college, a couple more well on their way. I mean, you're living the dream down there, Johnathan. But you said there's still doubt some days.
Yeah.
Right? So what do they sound like?
Yeah. I mean, the phone doesn't ring all the time, and this is a seasonal. One thing I like about it, and I've really learned from you guys too, is you plan out the year, and when the phone's going to ring, when it's going to pop up on people's radar, so you can and that's very true, and so you can kind of do marketing and things like that fits that. And the one thing I know you were talking about this year and on the calls was working with seniors, and how there's that senior panic in the fall, and you've got to decide at what point you're just like, there's not that much more we can do. This year's kind of a weird year, but when are you going to do that? And then before that, when the high schools talk to their juniors, and parents just always come right out of those things with tons of questions, and all of a sudden it's really on their mind. and sometimes it's with sophomores for at other schools. So there's just kind of a seasonality of the things that you're going to work on, and I think if you can get out in front of that a little bit and plan out what you're going to say and kind of when you're going to say it just by topics. I call it like an editorial calendar. I think somebody posted about that on the community, which is really smart. And there's just a rhythm that you can be aware of and take advantage of. But there's no, one of the other things you'd asked me, I think one of the things that helped me at one point was when someone called, I kind of remember the first referral I got from this, which came, I don't ask people for referrals. I mean, I know you're supposed to do that. Sorry. But a client had referred me to a friend of theirs who was a neighbor, and they were talking, they had a kid in college and all that. And I'm telling you, there's nothing like a referral network of moms, especially, who have kids in college. I mean, they talk to each other, they bring up a question about money, they'll say something really, really true. I mean, we talked about this before, but about divorced parents, it's just huge. And I've tried going through divorce lawyers before and not gotten really anywhere with that. But divorced parents talk to, they have friends, and they just so if you just use the people that you have contact with, whether they're clients or just people reading your newsletter or whatever they're doing, coming to your website, and just keep dripping and encouraging them, and that eventually pays off. But it doesn't, the phone doesn't ring every day with people that are looking to hire you. So take advantage of the seasonality of it too.
And I guess you got to have some faith in that
you do,
in those valleys, right? That the peaks come.
Yeah. And it's good time for new ideas. You guys keep coming up with new stuff, which is great. I love the scholarship thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, what we've got better at over the years, and this is always a very hard thing for me, that I think, slower than most business owners, is working on the business as opposed to in the business, right? I'm just like, for so many years, I'm just playing whack-a-mole and executing everything, right? And just, and I think that really probably slowed our growth ultimately, right? Where now being super intentional, like one thing I would tell myself if I could go back in time is, like, even though you feel like you're missing opportunities when you're doing like a zoning out brainstorm session or whatever, or analyzing your own business and operations and keeping this checklist of deficiencies, that time will ultimately accelerate. That's been kind of my experience, which I'm like new to, but it's been like, I think I've seen the fruits of that process, right? That I've kind of learned from others, that have just like borderline grab me by the collar to be like, you got to rip yourself out of the business if you want to really make improvements, right?
I like that. One of the things that it might be relevant, because of my RIA background and the registration, you just run from referrals, you run from endorsements, anything like that. It would just be like, no. And to me, what I've really learned is that the college space is different than that. And so I know they're loosening up the rules in the financial space on endorsements, but I mean, I wouldn't have any social media at all, because I didn't want, somebody to hit the wrong button or something and get in trouble and be dealing with all that. And so I'm changing about that. And I think I'm trying to really be able to separate enough that I can have two hats on and take advantage more of that kind of more endorsement referral way, because that's important, I think, for this space. Sure. I just think parents like to deal with people that other parents, can give some sort of testimonial, even if it's just a sentence or two about how things have gone. So,
no question. I think it's huge. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. I mean, do you have any kind of high level commentary on what you're seeing this year, period, but
Yeah.
maybe as it pertains to COVID, maybe not, and I guess it's impossible to know for sure, but any kind of generalizations in terms of acceptances, in terms of financial aid awards, scholarships, kind of any anecdotes that you've seen with your clients that has been noteworthy?
There, um, I was thinking about that, and there were a couple things that came to mind other than that. I've really kind of noticed the things that you have discussed in the past about what you've been seeing in terms of maybe a little widening open of the admissions doors for some students that might not otherwise get in. Um, one that was up along those lines where I'm seeing private schools, more liberal artsy kind of schools, are definitely doing that. So the awards still up in the air on. I'm not sure. I don't want to have any conclusions about that. But in terms of admissions, I'm definitely seeing that they're widening the net, if you will, for who can get in, especially with test optional.
Yeah.
The other, though, that surprised me a little bit was I had kind of in my head this notion that with out-of-state public schools, if you were if you had no need, you were going to be in. I mean, it was just like, you want to go to South Carolina, this is the year to go to South Carolina. You want to go to Alabama, whatever, Auburn, Georgia. And that's not holding as true as I thought it was going to be. Fortunately, I didn't stick my neck out and say it too much to anybody. But and the reason I think is COVID, and I think it's because they're just getting so many applications, and they're getting so many applications in state, and early applications. If you could, I think Auburn was up 30%, Virginia was up 35%. Test optional has something to do with that, but there's a big stay-at-home thing. NC State came out and said they're a ton more applications regular, but they were mostly from Virginia and Georgia, and not from the Northeast or the Midwest, which is where they had been getting people. And so I think they're getting a lot of people that are not financial need. And so I'm not so sure that it has quite that automatic thing. It's not putting you in a really small pile anymore for some of those schools. So I don't know what that'll mean in terms of enrollment, but just in terms of getting in right now and money, so that was a little bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of seeing similar things. I mean, these in between private liberal arts college, we're seeing everybody get accepted, everybody get merit-based scholarships of some kind and above their averages, right? I'm generalizing here, but that's been a pretty common theme, right?
Yeah.
So these, and then we've seen like the two big surprises for very competitive, super name brand schools. Northeastern up here in Boston, University of Miami down there in Florida, we're seeing acceptances that we didn't expect to see, that were really reach schools for these kids. Now, especially under early decision, right? And the surprising thing is, specifically with Miami, is that we've even seen some need-based aid awards, because oftentimes we'll see acceptances for early decision, but if they're full pay kids, type of deal. So again, in talking to a lot of admissions counselors, the feedback is basically even these super name brand schools are worried about enrollment, and they just make sure that even if they're losing margin and maybe even a little, quote unquote quality in terms of the average type of students measurables that they're used to, they're okay with that in the short term. So it's actually been this kind of ancillary benefit to COVID, in that kids are getting in when they might not get in otherwise, and maybe even getting a little bit more money. And to your point, but the state flagship universities, just about all of them are kind of business as usual. Our Harvards of the world, MITs, same deal, right? They're not, no changes for them.
Yeah.
But that's where we've seen, I think, some kind of pleasant surprises. So we'll take the silver lining, right?
Right.
So it's like, this is the year to throw your hat in the ring for that reach schools, kind of the basic sentiment, at this point. So a question here in terms of break down the seasonal time frame of college planning, please. So if it's easiest to do in kind of the college planning season, but in and around Labor Day, so end of August, going back to school is when people start to re-engage, right? If we're thinking of seniors, like, okay, oh shit, this is happening, right? So beginning of September, really up to Thanksgiving, is the hair on fire seniors in high school, craziest time for us in the college space, because it's a lot happens, as you know, Jonathan, in those couple of months, right?
Mhm.
And there's actually this pretty nice lull that happens, really from the holidays
Mhm.
through maybe even mid early March, where a lot of not to say we're doing nothing now. There's some acceptances and awards coming back now, but it's a pretty nice lull for a pretty extended period of time. Going up to about, say, mid March, when the rest of the acceptances award comes in, and then May 1st is when we have to make our decision. And then it's kind of like, okay, we know where we're going, we know what it's going to cost, how are we going to pay for this? So for the most part, that takes us through June, when we'll be pretty active. And really, July and August are pretty, which, especially if you're in the Northeast, nice time to be relatively dead. But those are really, I'd say, two of the slowest months.
Right.
So that's, I think, a pretty fair gauge of the kind of peaks and valleys.
I agree. And I think with the underclassmen, I think with juniors, some of our schools, most of our schools kind of talk to the juniors in the spring, once they the counselors get away from the seniors. So that they free up some time for the juniors, and they'll do their back to college nights and things like that. And some schools do that in the fall. So I'm not.
We'll go. So I'm with you there, and to your point, so we'll go start chasing juniors, kind of fall the high school calendar, and that will happen. Let's say mid to late April. Some schools are a little bit earlier in March. Matter of fact, we have one this Thursday, which is rare in February for the juniors. That's kind of a first that early. But generally speaking, it's kind of April, May is when they're doing this junior. Let's get ready for this next fall, basically. What should you be doing over the summer and all this? So hopefully that gives you a fair idea. So Chuck, good question here in terms of who are generous schools with a good computer science program, family that makes 600 to 700K, so they're not getting need-based financial aid, really smart kid, 1480 SAT. What I'm going to ask of you is to pop that question in the community. I'll get back. I'll tackle that one for you and get back with some recommendations. The tricky part I would have is rattling off the top of my head the computer science program piece. I can think of a lot of that are good with need-based financial aid, but the merit component, I just want to take a look at. So if you could pop that in the community, so we can all benefit from that. But those are the type of questions that I think are great questions that, especially for the newer type of advisor, in my opinion, the longest learning curve is coming up with actual school recommendations based on certain criteria. So that's where I said this yesterday in our masterclass, like for you newer advisors, and Jonathan's kind of exhibit A here in terms of not being on an island. What I'm telling you is you're not on an island. So the scariest part is initially you're holding yourself out there, and somebody's going to pay you money, and you got to fall through on certain things, and then you'd be like, oh shit, I don't know what has a good computer science program that gives good merit-based financial aid, right? Certainly you can use CapTool, and that's where you should start. But in addition to that, pop it in the community, because you're going to have a bunch of people that are going to say, hey, here's what we found. Great merit-based awards with good computer science programs. So Carnegie Mellon's one that just popped into my head. They're okay with merit. They're okay with merit, but awesome computer science program in Pittsburgh. Chuck, I know you're in Houston, so I don't know if there's if you're working with a local family that wants to stay relatively local, but that's one that just popped into my head, and it sounds like Johnathan too here. Okay, so any other questions, guys? Throw them in there. But any other kind of comments, Jonathan? And no worries if there's not, in terms of anything you're seeing this year for better or for worse.
The thing you were just talking about schools and kind of endorsing or being on the hook of something, when I struggle with that too, and I feel like there's some schools I know really well, they're mostly around here. I mean,
Right.
Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. I am not about to suggest that, some family that their daughter goes to, UCLA. I mean, what do I know? And
Right.
and there are great education consultants who really do that, who stay in that space, who visit schools, who or at least used to, who know them. And so, if you have relationships with them, that's fine too. Um, or you can use more neutral, like CAP, like the tool, and give them lists and just say, here's some things for you to research. You're not trying to do all the work for the parents and family. Every family's different, and their kids are different. And so, um, but you can kind of prime the pump and give them some ideas, but not feel like you need to plan their future out.
Exactly, and that's why I mean we'll want some feedback from clients to say like, okay, where do you want to go close to home? Are you open
Hmm.
to anywhere? Is there an ideal region or whatever? So one nice part in the CAP tool in the advanced search is you can do miles from home, right? We have
Hmm.
like within 100 miles to home, or 500 miles, or doesn't matter, or something to that effect. So a lot of times, most kids want to stay relatively close to home for the most part. So okay, let's go find schools within 300 miles or whatever
Yeah,
that's going to give you merit-based scholarships. And a line that
that's
I'll
great.
use all the time, pretty frequently, is we're not going to tell you where to apply. We're not going to tell you where not to apply. We're not going
Hmm.
to tell you where to go, where not to go. It's our job to get you educated. Like this is what you're signing up for better for us. We're going
Hmm.
to encourage you to hedge our bets, right?
Hmm.
Financially, academically, which we do next to nothing in terms of the admission side of things.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, I do I'm borderline paranoid. Like sometimes parents believe in their kids a little bit too much. And I was the same way. That was my mother. She couldn't believe I didn't get into every single college. So I that's it's loving parents. I get it, but I'm sure you see, Jonathan, some unrealistic
Yeah,
college list right out of the
yeah,
gates.
yeah.
Again, we always say it's about hedging your bets, and I just want to give you some other considerations. And even and maybe if you get into MIT as a computer science major, pay the 80 grand a year. It's MIT, right? But let's have some other awesome schools that are going to be half price
Yeah,
or less, and we'll help give you some good ideas
have some
you know,
choices.
on that front. That's right. And just really quickly, Bob, the question is you'd like to give access to your CAP to a relative. How do you do that? So just go in the facts section of CAP when it asks to invite. Go to client, put in add a new client, and right on the first page there'll be a chance to enter an email address. Put the email address in there and send it out, and they'll get an invitation to get into the family portal and use CAP there. And then last question we'll hit on before we sign off for today is speak about athletic scholarships acceptances for sports such as golf. So we could actually, it'd probably be worthwhile to do a whole thing on athletic
Yeah.
scholarships, and we work with a lot of student athletes. But a couple of things here. Number one, we can't speak on are they going to get into a school based on athletics. That's all up to the coach, right? So we can and whoever's recruiting them, and that's a whole animal in and of itself. But the deal is we can add some commentary around how athletic scholarships work, right?
Mhm.
Athletic scholarships don't exist at Division III. So if we're getting a discount, it doesn't matter if we're on the team or not, if we're the biggest recruit in the history of the institution or not, we're not getting an athletic scholarship. Same goes true for Ivy League. So we can only help them. Do you have a chance at merit? Do you have a chance at need-based aid, right? If there's any inclination to go the athletic route, artistic route, musician route, I always encourage families, students, lead with that because it may get you into a school you might otherwise not get into based on that,
Mhm.
right? And maybe it's a school that's more generous, right? Division I, again, there could be athletic scholarships. We can't speak to that. That's all up to the coach and the recruiting and whatever. We might be able to help you. Like, for example, even at Division I schools, we did this recently at Boston College. Division I school, but not a full scholarship. And we do this probably at least once a year at BC. Is we said, turn down your athletic scholarship because you're going to get more need-based financially. And that happens all the time. And they get more money. The coach loves it because there's more scholarship that goes back in the tail. They still sign their national letter of intent. They're still on the team. It's still the same honor of having athletic scholarship. But I can't get all the way into the weeds. Hopefully that's some high level information on scholarships. But to your point, we should do a whole day dedicated to that. Maybe we'll do a podcast or webinar on that.
Well, I want to throw in one thing in and say, I would just suggest don't let the athletic scholarship drive the bus. There are very few students for whom it really makes a difference. And, you know, I mean, I've seen kids, you get a partial scholarship at a Division I, you get a few $1,000s a year, and you go to a school that you're really not happy at, and then you get hurt and you're stuck, you know, 4 states away, you know, and it just, you know, it's nice if you get something. Make sure you're going to the school you want to go to.
It's a great point, because same thing too, like you're being recruited, you're being told what you want to hear, everybody's bought in, and that may or may not be the case. And it's like, it's not like coaches are necessarily being deceitful. They, you know, maybe some are. I think that's the minority, to be honest. But they have to they have to have enough, you know, basically offer 40 people and they're going to take 10 in a lot of cases, right? And even like when you talk about athletic scholarships, so you know, lacrosse down there, University of Virginia, Johnathan, right? A powerhouse every single year, UNC Chapel Hill, compete for the national championships. In Division I lacrosse, you know, there's only 12.5 scholarships per team, even at the University of Virginia, for about 40 kids usually. So even the biggest stud at the #1 school in the country is getting a little kind of fraction off for the biggest scholarship on the team. So, you know, so again, there's a lot there with athletic scholarships, and to your point though, it's worth digging in. But Johnathan, I want to thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot as always. It's great to get to know you a little bit. Excited to get to know you further, and super grateful again for all that you bring to the community.
Well, thank you, and thank you guys for what you've put together and continue to change and improve. It is absolutely completely space changing in this space. It's really revolutionary, and it's I'm glad to be a little tiny part of it. So thank you for all you're doing.
I appreciate you, buddy. Let me, if you could stay on for 1 minute. I'm gonna stop the recording, kick everybody out. Actually, I don't know if I can do that. So I'll ping you offline, Johnathan. But thank you.
Will do. Okay, man.
All right.